Editing is what takes all the great footage you captured and makes sense of it. Or it takes all the terrible footage you captured and makes it good. Video editors, do you review your edits before exporting? No, I'm not just talking about a graphic cutting off too early or a media offline screen. I'm talking about reviewing your videos like you didn't edit them. Hopefully your edit makes sense to you. You know what you're trying to say. Your audience doesn't. A big chunk of my last few years has been spent reviewing my team's edits. There's a few lessons that I've learned that I think all video editors need to know, because it's gonna make you a better editor. So I'm gonna take an old video from the channel and review it as though it was turned over by a member of my team. Okay, we're jumping in and we're gonna review this video on 5 tips on how to make a better reel. I'll link it below if you are interested in checking it out. And let's just see if these review notes can make this video any better. All right, we got 5 tips for building a better show reel. Let's get into it. All right, first, we're gonna cut the whole intro. Things first, there's a lot of info out there on how to build a reel, and everyone has their own opinions. I'm giving you 5 things that I look for when hiring, but also 5 things that I've learned over the years when I make and improve upon my reel. That's your intro. That's all the info you need. So all these tips I'm going to say are kind of in order in the way you need to be thinking about them when you go about building a reel. I say that because it's going to make your job so much easier going through these steps. I think this part is kind of redundant. There's just no need for that. I think we can just jump right into the actual video itself. We're basically just trying to re-explain how a checklist works. About these in the order I'm going to present them in. Tip number... Mark a little in and out point. Go to there. Eyes wander off cam. Tailor your reel to who you are as a creative. This graphic sits for a long time, but I'm not mad at it. By thinking through the goal of your reel up front, it's going to make your job of selecting your shots that much more efficient. If you're trying to go for a cinematographer position or position... I think this section could have a list of graphics or a graphic list that kind of spells out a little bit more of what I'm saying. I'm going to say add graphic list. And I think of graphic screens in a video like this. What is the notes you would take if this was a lecture? I like to have a graphics list that details out what's being said. So if the viewer wants to just screenshot that, they have all the info they need. You've probably done a lot of interviews, so let's see how cam A and B cut together and how you've used them in an edit that you've done. I think that last little bit is a good tip. It kind of gets lost behind the graphic, and I think that graphic is the important part. So I think I would just cut this whole section out and move this graphic forward. Tip number 2, be ruthless when it comes to shot selection. Go through your past work with a fine-tooth comb. Everything you choose. Let's say cut that soundbite. I don't think it adds anything. Everything you choose. And then it just picks up right here. The absolute best you can do. Just cut that line and then have that come right out of that graphic. Be ruthless with your shot selection. Everything you choose has to be in there for a reason. You should look at everything you've produced, bring it all into Premiere, and start running through every video that you've done, and just start throwing in your favorite clips, the best clips. Does this show any B-roll of this actual process? It's cool to see the footage, but I think what's going to be more impactful and paint the picture a little bit better is actually seeing this process happen. Number 3, grab attention up front and never let your audience lose interest. You want to come out of the gate swinging, right? That first shot. Fluff dialogue. Cut that soundbite. So choose your best shot or your best sequence and throw that up front. Now, yeah, we can talk about when you want to put a logo up and all this, and I've done so many different ways. No. Cut. Showcase sequences over individual shots. I'm still going to say that is absolutely the number one thing.
you need to do if you are creating a reel.
I harp on this so much, and the reason I believe so strongly in showing a sequence is because one shot tells me nothing.
Cut, because you come out of that graphic screen, show sequences over individual shots, and then you pick right up at this following soundbite.
One shot tells me nothing. Anyone could make one shot look good.
All you need.
Number 5, don't get fancy. I don't want to see any distractions from your work. I'm talking solely you making a montage reel and you're just slapping transitions over it.
Yes, Video Copilot. That was from a long time ago.
Obviously, exception to this rule being if you're pulling sequences from the final edit and maybe some transitions were used in the edit.
You're not adding transitions. My God, please. We don't need the excessive amount of transitions. We are not filmmakers in 2012 anymore.
I don't give a shit about that. Leave that out. Let me see your work. Let your work speak for itself. Believe in your work enough that you don't need that.
See, that's a good tip.
My goal is to use my experience and give you actionable tips, almost checklist items when you build a reel.
I like this graphic and it fits well here, but I would also throw this up earlier when I first reference the checklist. This graphic to the beginning.
And these are the tips that I wish I knew at the time, right? I'm going single shots montage. I'm trying to fill time just to make this thing longer. These are all mistakes I've made, right? I can admit where I was wrong.
Okay, we know.
I can admit what I've learned from those mistakes. And in return, I hope that you can learn from those mistakes.
I'm basically saying the same thing twice. We go from I've made these mistakes into you can learn from my mistakes.
You don't have to make them. At least that's what I'm trying to do here. If you found it helpful, give me that thumbs up. If you didn't find it helpful and these tips offended you,
so this whole graphic, I would actually put a little bit more noticeable. At the end of watching I will then click off, there's a little box for timecode, and just make a note of overall. And now this allows me to leave some just general overall notes. I notice there's a lot of dead air, even just, words. Add more graphics to highlight some of these tips. Be aware of any time he looks off cam and cut it out. These are things that need to be taken into account throughout the entire video. I'm not going to say you need to go through this process for yourself. I would actually encourage it that you do. Frame is free up to, I think, 2 gigabytes of space. And it just kind of gets you out of Premiere or whatever editing software you use and allows you to focus solely on reviews. Now, if you don't want to use Frame, totally fine. You can do the same thing in Premiere and just leave markers on your timeline. But I would not ever suggest that when you're watching it down, you're making revisions while you're watching it to review. I kind of want to go back and make these revisions and then repost this video and see if it does better.
But asking yourself to turn your own emotions off while you're watching your own work, something you may even love, well, that's really difficult. So here are a few things that I've found to make that easier. Number 1, find someone else to edit what you filmed. You may be in love with the shot, but in the context of an edit, it doesn't serve a purpose. A non-biased third party will easily be able to make that call and axe that shot. But I get it. Finding a friend who edits or hiring someone isn't always going to be possible. Well, number 2, take time away from the project before you jump into editing. A photographer I worked with said, never do business in a creative mood and don't be creative in a business mood. Similar to editing. Never edit when you come off the high of a shoot. Let that creativity pass. Then come into your edit with a more logical brain. Editing is where you tell the story. You have to tell it logically and concisely. But again, I get it. Maybe you have a speedy turnaround time. No time to wait and start editing. Well, number 3, review your edit as an avatar for your audience. You created that video as an expert in the story you were telling. Now throw that all away. Put yourself in your viewer's shoes. Do you feel something when you see the visuals? Reviewing your edit is just as much about the editing process as sound design or adding music. It's your final stamp of approval before your final export. If you are overly attached to a shot or it's just there because it's cool, it's not serving a purpose in your edit. Everything in your edit needs to serve the story. Make it engaging and nothing more. But if you have a bitchin' 20-second shot but only 3 seconds to fill, it's time to take your emotion out of it and chop the shot up. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got videos to review.